Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Dots podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Usama, and today we are very excited to be bringing you a very fresh perspective from the lens of a chief of staff. And for that, we've invited Stephanie to be here with us. And in this upcoming conversation, not only would we be going to explore the role of a chief of staff in detail, but we'll also get to know about her journey as well. So, with that, stay tuned with us and let's get started. Stephanie, we're very excited to be here with us. And how had your day been so far?
Yes, it's been great. Just got back from vacation. So excited to do this. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're definitely very honored to be here with you as well. So, first of all, I want to explore the role a little bit in detail because most people only know this role from the forces. But since most corporates are now having a chief of staff, so I want to understand what are the different responsibilities that comes with the title, what does the title entail in journal, and what is it like to be one?
Yeah, well, to be one, it's awesome. I work on the greatest team. So I love
Nice.
being chief of staff. This should be the easiest question to answer, but I often find myself struggling with it in introductions
Yeah.
sometimes and simplifying it to say I'm the queen of special projects. My job really
Right.
is to keep the rhythm of our business while
Mm-hmm.
fostering a cohesive and unique culture that works for a variety of different people on the team. So I'm blessed enough to be on a team of highly specialized, world-renowned technologists. If we
Mm-hmm.
were an American football team, I would say they're the quarterbacks and I'm the offensive line. So my job is to block and tackle, creating room for them to innovate and score
Mm-hmm.
touchdowns. So sometimes that might be things like managing budget planning or building business cases, or sometimes it's supporting them and creating opportunities and platforms for them to elevate their messages, initiatives, and gain audiences with different stakeholders, just making sure we put our best foot forward.
Right. And if we were to, in a nutshell, if we were to compare this to the role of a chief operating officer, what do you think are the different aspects of both these titles?
I think the different aspects, of course, it's set in at operations, right? Chief
Mm-hmm.
operating officers have, depending on the business or the scope, have a much different focus in terms of what the operational impacts are to the business.
Mm-hmm.
If in terms of Ericsson, maybe that would be getting product delivered to customers, making sure there's efficiencies in each process. And we do some of that in terms of specific processes that might help with simplification on my team, but our primary
Okay.
focus is not one of operational efficiency.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So now give us not really an elevated pitch, but maybe a brief summary of how your stint in the telecom industry had been and what are the different positions that you've served in your professional journey.
Yeah, where to start? So I still feel like I'm very early in my career journey. So I feel incredibly humbled to be sitting here talking to you as if I have it figured out. But
Right.
I started in the industry at a company called TXO Systems as a sales
Mm-hmm.
support person out of college. So we were
Mm-hmm.
a small startup out of Chepstow, Wales, specializing in telecom asset management.
Mm-hmm.
They were in their early days of expanding to the US, and I was just excited to have my first big girl job, 9 to 5, if you will.
Right.
So, as a small business, that job gave me the opportunity to carve out my own path, kind of creating the job I wanted by going after opportunities that made good business sense to go after. So I
Okay.
worked my way up through the ranks in various sales positions there to eventually taking over as CEO for the Americas.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a fun journey. And that company is what really made me fall in love with the industry. So I was not beholden to any one manufacturer and had
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of customers. So it really gave me the opportunity to understand the different pain points and business operations of a huge range of companies from a much wider perspective. So I stayed there for
Right.
nearly 7 years, learning from just the most wonderful mentors who helped shape my career. The founder
Mm-hmm.
of that company was an engineer turned entrepreneur. Um,
Okay.
and I still have so much admiration for him, and it instilled in me a sense of great loyalty to your stakeholders.
Right.
I wanted him to succeed, and I saw every action I took as being a driver for that purpose. So I still work
Okay.
with that mindset often. And
Mm-hmm.
From there, I moved to a company called Advantage Technologies as the director of strategy.
Mm-hmm.
They owned several different small businesses in the telecom sector. Each had their own unique offering, and that gave me the opportunity to sort of hone my skills on running
Mm-hmm.
multiple business segments that each had unique, different attentions required.
Yeah.
And that drove me from where I am today. And what did that was the desire to kind of push myself out of that small business comfort zone, learning
Okay.
more about the wireless industry as a whole and how to impact larger
Mm-hmm.
businesses such as Ericsson, which is a whole nother animal, and skills that I needed to grow in myself.
Right. So as far as the startup world is concerned, I've mostly seen companies who are very directly consumer facing. For example, companies would have apps, they would have their websites, and they would essentially be providing a service to their end users. But for startups in telecom space, they're quite fascinating to me because there are very few companies in the telecom space, but their footprint is extensively enormous. So, in that regard, how do you actually get funding and you validate the business idea, and how do you actually take the business to have a liftoff essentially?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it all comes down to identifying pain points in customers. In TXO, for instance, that was the asset management in terms of an end to end solution of providing multi vendor parts and not wanting to deal with so many vendors and putting it all together in the installation. And then also,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with those retired assets responsibly and recycling them? So I think the founder there, as an engineer who was a consumer of these goods, identified a
Right.
pain point that he had and he turned that into a business. So I think it all comes down to identifying pain points. What is a
Mm-hmm.
problem that needs to be solved, and then how do you solve it? And that might just be your business.
Right. That's pretty interesting to be honest. And when I went on the website and I read about their about me section, like what does the company does, that really sounded very interesting. I was like, how come the big companies never thought about it? It's really nice.
Yeah, it's almost like you find something that annoys you and you say, how do I
Yeah.
solve that? And that's exactly what
Yeah.
he did.
Right, right, right. So other than that, Stephanie, I want to ask you about being a leader. So there are various forms of leadership, but the latest and the greatest one that I've seen so far in the telecom business is about is about having the servant leadership. And second of all, how do you think leadership can really get the best side out of employees, especially in an environment where there's hybrid work, there is remote work, there is all sorts of different dynamics of workspace, especially post COVID.
Yeah. Servant leadership, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. And that is,
Yeah.
how do you serve your employees to get the best out of them? And I think the answer to that is getting to know people personally. And it may be something that was
Hmm.
harder to do over COVID. I started with Ericsson during COVID, completely remote. How do you meet
Yeah.
these people? And it's carving out the time, not just, oh, okay, let's talk for 2 minutes before we get started on our meeting. Every single
Hmm.
person has different motivations. Every single person
Right.
needs something different from their leadership, whether that
Hmm.
be in the form of recognition or support for continued education. And you can't just slap a blanket on everybody and say, this is how they're motivated. This is why
Yeah.
they come to work. And the only way to properly serve people is to understand who they are as a person and what they need from you. Some need more than others. So I think
Right.
getting to know every single person on your team personally is
Hmm.
the most important thing you can do.
Right. 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 That is a very good perspective. So other than that, once you started serving in the position in a very, I would say, leadership centric space, what were certain myths that got busted for you?
Good question. For me, I would say I think the busted myth for me is that in order to be a contributing member of a team, you all need to have the same level of skill sets. So
Hmm.
going in with that mindset, you can hit a wall of imposter syndrome quite quickly that you yourself
Hmm.
built. How am I going to help
Right.
a team full of engineers when I'm come from business strategy and sales?
Hmm.
Our team helped shatter that misconception for me by celebrating our differences. While
Right.
I have a different background and theirs might be in science and engineering, they
Mm-hmm.
use their strengths to lift me up, and I use mine to do the same for them. So our differences is what make us stronger
Mm-hmm.
as a unit. We don't all need to be the same, nor do we want to be.
Right, 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 right. So other than that, being in telecom space, one of the things that I've experienced so far is that it's not really that simple to understand the scientific principles behind the products. As compared to some of the other fields in technology, there are a lot of other resources available, especially online, to be honest. So in that regard, once you are climbing that leadership level, not only do you need to be competent in terms of dealing with people, but you also need, in my opinion, I would say the way I see leadership is that you need to understand your product too. So, in that regard, while you're traversing that journey, that professional journey, I would say, how do you upskill in telecom technology, specifically speaking, which, in my opinion, is not the easiest to master?
Yeah. Well, continued education is probably one of the most important things we can do in any industry. Never stop learning. There's not a checklist that can be completed at the end of the day. There's
Right.
no cross off the chore list. But outside the formal certifications, degrees, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, practical experience that are sometimes obvious where it is a list, often
Mm-hmm.
overlooked, I think, are the intangibles and the undefined competencies. For example, deeply knowing your customers and their
Mm-hmm.
customers and the entire ecosystem with all of its players.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyone with the willpower can study and pass a test, and I'm not minimizing how important that is or how
Yeah.
hard it is, but really, what really elevates some of the leaders I look up to in this industry are the skills that they have, which are not required per se. So,
Mm-hmm.
leaders with a deep knowledge of the motivations and financial health of key players. So, acquired through analyzing balance sheets, if you will. Leaders who study and understand how to build a target addressable market. The way
Mm-hmm.
that you phrase the question kind of perfectly captures what I'm saying is, don't look at building competency only in a single job role. Build it surrounding the
Mm-hmm.
entire industry and all that encompasses.
So it's very interesting that today we're having this conversation because just yesterday I was talking to someone about sustainability. So if I will ever get a chance, I will definitely ask this question to whoever I can speak to in the telecom space. So although it's not directly related to what we were talking about, but if possible, I do want you to shed some light on sustainability and how well are we understanding the need in telecom space and how are we planning to address the issue?
Yeah. So building networks with sustainability in mind is the foundation of building a greener world as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Ericsson 5G, for instance, is being built with lower powered radios, enabled with intelligent software that helps reduce carbon footprint with features such as micro sleep, turning on and off in peak traffic times and when it's not being
Mm-hmm.
used, sites powered with renewable energy when possible, but that really only scratches the surface of
Mm-hmm.
our human impact on the planet. What
Right.
really excites me regarding technology and
Mm-hmm.
sustainability is basically the power of digitalization in terms of everything, what they call the enablement effect. So, for
Mm-hmm.
an example, my favorite subject being robots, untethered by edge
Okay.
computing, powered by the latest wireless technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's a study, for instance, the name escapes me, that shows that the adoption of large scale robotics across industries can reduce our carbon footprint by more than 15%. So
Oh,
if
okay.
you think of that
Mm-hmm.
number is huge compared to the 1.4% that actually running mobile networks
Exactly.
contributes.
Yeah.
So I don't think 5G
Mm-hmm.
can save the planet on its own. But what I've never seen before
Yeah.
and what really gives me hope is that
Mm-hmm.
industries are not only saying they want a greener planet or buying virtual power agreements, they're
Mm-hmm.
actually looking at sustainability in every single part of their operations, from delivery to running networks to recycling. So I think this is the first time we've really seen networks be built with sustainability in mind, not just as an
Mm-hmm.
afterthought.
Right. So, other than work talk, Stephanie, I want to ask you about work culture. So, do you have any cool traditions at work?
Yeah, I think my favorite is fika. So, for your viewers
Uh-huh.
who don't know what that is, and I definitely did not know what that was before working at Ericsson, it's
Hmm.
a Swedish word that means coffee and cake break. But not simply just having a coffee at your desk, it's
Yeah.
dedicating time and moments with colleagues to sit down and form a connection. It's not
Yeah.
uncommon on my team to receive a Teams invite, even in these virtual days, that just says fika. And
Yeah.
it's a chance to take a break from the meetings and get to know people. Our team has a standing
Yeah.
fika every month where there's only one rule, and it is no work talk allowed. So
Nice.
I usually leave those with my cheeks hurting
Yeah.
from laughing so much because the crazy random subjects that we discuss when
Yeah.
work talk is removed as an option. So for me, in order to work together best, we need to dedicate that time to getting to know each other on a personal level. And I really look forward when I see Fika pop up on
Yeah.
my calendar because I know it's just going to be a good time. And also in
Hmm.
this age where we just have gotten in the habit of meeting to meeting to meeting in this Teams world, is it's just nice to take a
Absolutely.
break and just talk.
Right. That is very profound. So switching gears a little bit, Stephanie, if we were to talk about formal education, what had been your route as far as the formal education is concerned, and how do you think it had helped you in being the leader you are?
Huh. So, my education background, I have my business administration and marketing degree, and it was really not a traditional path in the sense that I worked two jobs as I was going to school in order to be able to afford it. I worked during the day at a company called Mattress Discounter, selling mattresses.
Right.
At night, I bartended and I got classes in anytime I could,
Yeah.
whether it's online or going to night classes at Towson. And
Oh, wow.
I think that helped shape me
Yeah.
as who I am entering the workforce and today as multitasking. You know, while I wish I had that
Yeah.
traditional went off to college, focused on my studies, and then entered the world ready to go, I
Yeah.
knew that that's not how life is. You don't get to just focus on one thing. So it really
Right.
helped me balance it. It really helped me appreciate the value of hard work. It also taught me how important networking is. So my first job at TXO as that sales support person, I got through
Hmm.
the staffing company Randstad. And I got it because one of my fellow
Hmm.
bartenders went to be a recruiter for Randstad. And I kept
Uh-huh.
in
Okay.
contact with her. She said, I've got this perfect administration
Hmm.
position for you. And that was the first thing of staying in contact, networking, making your goals known. And it really showed the importance of, you know, this seemingly insignificant interaction you might have with somebody. And there's no reason for
Hmm.
you to stay in touch. You can always continue to network and help one another.
Right. That is excellent and massive respect for that. And honestly, I think maybe somebody who hears that other leaders have been through the same journey, it might really resonates well with them, and maybe it might motivate a lot of students while they're so early in their professional journey that that's not the end, but it's just one of the many ingredients that you have to have at that time, and that would really mold you into a very strong structure. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. Other than that, I want to ask you about public speaking. I see that you're a very confident speaker, and leaders and press conferences and talks and whatnot, they always go hand in hand. So I want you to share some thoughts about how should one improve their public speaking skills, and maybe some thoughts about the importance of that too.
Yeah. It's so funny that you kindly say I'm a confident public speaker because I don't feel that way. And I think a lot of people don't, but you get there because
Yeah.
of practice. So we practice and we train at everything in life that we want to get better at: fitness, cooking, sports.
Hmm.
But we think of speaking as something that doesn't require it because we do it all the time. But
Hmm.
stagnancy is something that's bred in comfort. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. So I'll be honest, I was nervous to speak with you today. It's not necessarily something I do every day, feeling comfortable to speak about my journey. I mean, who wants to hear it? And
Yeah.
it would have been easier and more comfortable for
Yeah.
me to tell you I'm too busy or pass, no thanks. But
Hmm.
that's not growth and that's not challenging myself. So
Hmm.
maybe we don't all have someone as kind as you to go and share our platform, give us a platform to share on. Maybe we're not offered a speaking slot at a keynote every month. but that doesn't mean you don't have opportunities to practice. So I would encourage people to treat the next meeting you're hosting as if it were a
Hmm.
keynote in front of 1,000 people, even if it's only
Right.
5 people. Research your audience,
Hmm.
practice your storytelling. And if you do that, I promise you, not only will you have had a more productive meeting, so it's not just for you, you'll find it becomes easier and easier, and your communication and presentation skills improve faster than if you had treated it like any other interaction. Most of us don't
Right.
publicly speak enough to have
Hmm.
practice unless you create those little opportunities in your mind that are practice.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And that's quite encouraging. Other than that, I want to talk to you about core values because they kind of give us a structured path to maneuver through life. What had been some of your core values that you've really upheld them in your life?
This is my favorite question. And I can't say I always uphold them, but I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in the power of positive thinking. And that's a bit corny and a completely overused sentiment. I know that. But in a more practical sense, I believe
Hmm.
that deciding to have a good day results in a good day. If you decide to be
Hmm.
successful, you will get success as a result. For me, that decision is to live by my core values, which are gratitude, humility, and kindness. I don't believe it's enough to just say that when someone asks me or to write them down and hopefully they convey in my everyday life. Depending on your beliefs, perhaps it's a daily prayer or a mantra or simply just words of affirmation. But I have to wake up, speak them out loud, if even only to
Hmm.
myself. And it serves as a nagging reminder throughout the day when I veer away from those core values. So, the most basic example I could provide, I usually do mine on the way to work. Um, if on the way to work I express out loud that I'm grateful to have a job, it makes
Hmm.
it a little bit difficult to complain about traffic that I
Exactly.
encounter on the
Exactly. Yeah.
way there. Or if you disagree with a colleague at work, but I have just dedicated myself to be kind, it's a reminder
Hmm.
to choose my words and actions with kindness in mind. So, whatever your core values are, I just believe
Yeah.
that you must enter every interaction with the intent to embody them. And trust me, I fall short of my core values. And the next day, when I wake up and I speak those words out loud again, it not only sets me back on the right intended path, but it
Hmm.
forces me to look back on what I did yesterday and maybe some areas where I could have done better to stay true to myself and my core values.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my colleagues once said that. So she went to work and she was all angry, and then by the end of the day, she's like, I started reflecting that when I had been angry the entire day, I felt like everybody had been angry around me.
Yeah,
But the next day, when I was all happy, I was laughing, I had a great day. I felt like everybody around me was happy, was having a great day as well. So she's like, okay, now I know how to structure myself that if I am going to be behaving a certain way, it's going to have an effect around me and everybody's going to have a bad day then.
exactly. I think intentions, people forget that your
Yeah.
intentions are sensed. So even if someone doesn't agree with me, if I go in with the intention of being kind and humble and gracious, then maybe they disagree with me, but they don't take it in a personal manner. They might be able to explain it
Yeah.
better to me. So I think just having those core values at the intent of everything you do is just so important.
Right, exactly. So other than that, Stephanie, how do you keep up with the changing trends in the industry, considering that with the advent of cloud, things are just I would say evolving at an explosive rate.
Yeah. I mean, we live in the easiest and greatest time ever if you think about it in terms of following up
Hmm.
on trends. How many people roll over in the morning and start scrolling Instagram or spending hours looking at memes? You can be doing that on Fierce Wireless, on LinkedIn, following
Yeah.
your competitors, your customers, people you admire in the industry, and reading those same
Hmm.
things. I mean, there's endless podcasts out there. You could listen to the same
Yeah.
song on the way to work that you've listened to 1,000 times, or you could put yourself and learn something new. So I think treating it like we do entertainment, and it is entertaining. I think our industry is the most entertaining there is. There's so many passionate people with different
Yeah.
thoughts. So I think
Hmm.
treating it like that, if you can scroll Instagram, you can go ahead and scroll LinkedIn or Fierce Wireless.
Hmm. Right, right, right. Interesting. So other than that, if I were to talk to you about growth and mentorship, I want you to shed some light on again the importance of mentorship in one's life and what to expect out of I would say a beneficial mentorship session with
Mhm.
someone who's senior than you.
Mentorship is, I believe, the most important thing people should chase. For instance, I don't chase a job title or a salary. I mean, those things are important. I'm not saying they're not, but not on their own. You also need to pick your boss as carefully as you choose your job. And that is because mentorship with the right mentor, they introduce you to the right people, they help you achieve your goals. Um, and I think in terms of getting those mentors, it can be uncomfortable at first until you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's making it known, directly asking someone, will you be my mentor? And that suddenly gives you some sort of responsibility for me. And those people really start looking out for you and wanting to help you. I think it's important in terms of mentorship that people arm themselves with a whole toolbox of mentors. There might be a mentor
Right.
that you have in a totally different field than you, but that just has wonderful business acumen and advice. You need to have someone who follows the same speciality as you. And I think in return, you need to also be a mentor. And selfishly, that helps you because you can go
Yeah.
into, and I've done it, gone into some mentorship sessions and just kind of twiddling our thumbs, like, what do we talk about here? I don't really know
Yeah.
how to do this. It can be uncomfortable. But once you
Mm-hmm.
start mentoring others, it gives you
Mm-hmm.
ideas of how did you help them? How could I receive that help? What should we talk about? So I think being a mentor helps you get more out of your own mentee relationship.
Right. Excellent. And now that we're heading towards the end of our conversation, Stephanie, I would wrap it up at the point that now being where you are, if you were to look at your journey in a retrospect, how do you think you've evolved as a person? And what would be your recommendation for people who are either students or are early career professional in terms of how to cope up with failures, I would say?
So I think in terms of coping with failures, you learn a lot more from your failures than you do your successes if you look back. I'll say in my early days of managing people, I was a terrible manager. I'm embarrassed of some of the tactics I used because I didn't know any better. And now, as I grow and look back on those mistakes and how I've changed since then, it's helped me be a better person. So, in terms of failures, I think just using those, looking at them, don't dwell on them and say, why was that a failure?
Mm-hmm.
How can I do better next time? Reflecting on my career journey, I think for me, just realizing where your happiness comes from. Um, and for me, that's impact. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
one of my passions is career coaching, and a lot of people chase that title, that salary. And the problem with having a checklist like that is once you hit the milestone, you're left there like, okay, what's next? Do I tack another milestone on just for the sake of it? Maybe you reached the top of what you could ever
Hmm.
do. Like, now
Yeah.
what? Now your happiness is tied up in these milestones. And forget the milestones. Start chasing impact and what makes you happy. What impact do you bring to the business? What impact do you bring to the lives of your colleagues? Um, so I think it's important to just remember you can hit milestones. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll be happy once you achieve them. So identify what your legacy is and chase your legacy. Don't chase job titles.
Right, that is very deep, and I would say $1 million advice. I must say. But anyways, thank you so much, Stephanie. Honestly, I had a great day today talking to you about leadership and technology, and I wish you nothing but success in your career journey as well. As
Likewise.
Thank you. And as far as our audience are concerned, if you like the content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And do buy me a coffee, to which I'll provide a link in the description as well. And do check us out on other streaming platforms as well. And until the next episode rolls out, take care of yourself. This is your host, Usama, signing off, and I will see you in the next episode.